Thank you, Steve. Thank you, John. Thank you to Media Posts for having me yet again. This is actually my first publishing summit. I've been to a load of email summits, so excited to be here to speak with y'all and talk to this wonderful panel. When Media Posts asked me to help moderate and then showcased those that they were going to have up on the stage, I jumped at the chance because we have a lot of great brands up here, a lot of great experience, and let's have a great discussion in terms of bringing this forward. As Steve mentioned, my name is George DiGuido. I am VP of Growth at The Information. For those of you who may not be as familiar with The Information, we're a tech media finance publisher. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary, founded out of Silicon Valley. But we really follow tech through all of the different industries that it impacts and publish news on the daily. I'm going to let the rest of the panel go ahead and introduce themselves. So, Iván, let's start with you.
All right. Hi, I'm Iván Adaime. I'm the president of Impremedia. Impremedia is a publisher focused on the U.S. Hispanic market. We have print and digital publications. Some of our publications, we have, for example, the oldest Spanish in Spanish newspaper in the United States, which is El Diario in New York. We also publish La Opinión in LA, along digital brands that we have. So we are very, mission driven from the beginning, and very focused in our core market. There are 40 million Spanish speakers in the United States, and we want to super serve them.
My name is Justin Barton. I am the Senior Vice President of Digital Strategy and Partnerships at Black Enterprise. I like to describe Black Enterprise as the Black version of Forbes or Fortune magazine. We no longer have a magazine, though, so we're really a digital business and an events business, and yeah, pretty much I handle all digital functions at Black Enterprise.
Excellent. Scott.
Hey everybody, Scott Hendrickson, former commerce executive turned publishing executive, currently SVP at Vice Media Group, who I'm sure everyone in the room is familiar with. If there's any other questions, you can direct them to Avi Zemak at avi.zemak@perion.com. He's over there in the brown, so thank you.
I'm Allison Murphy. I'm COO at Axios. We have a national, local, and B2B business. We focus on bringing news and information to smart professionals in a way that's worthy of your time, and I focus specifically on our national and local businesses.
Great. So I am in uniform. I am wearing a blazer. It's not navy blue, but I decided to buck the trend and keep it on while I was up here. Again, excited to hear from all y'all with the questions that we have for you. So my job is to ask questions, but I would also encourage the audience, if you have questions or things that come up during the session, please let's make this a full discussion. We're going to talk about revenue, something that's near and dear to, I'm sure, everyone in this room's heart. And so why don't we go ahead and get started? When I got the panel invite, my first challenge was actually reading the panel title, because it is a mouthful, but I live in Connecticut, flew down from New York, and last weekend I did start to see green shoots in my garden, but then subsequent to that, it got covered with about 8 inches of snow. So I hope that's not an omen for the media and publishing industry in general, but why don't we start there? I'm going to throw this one over to Justin, and really, are we in a media winter, and is it ready to thaw?
I would say coming into this year, everything we've seen so far, especially from the ad sales side of the business with the RFPs, things look a lot better than, let's say, this time last year. People were speaking of recession. Everybody was, the agencies were very hesitant, or the brands were hesitant to spend through the agencies. But I feel like this year we've seen a substantial amount of RFPs. If I just look at the business that we have, while we are minority focused, and that gives us a little niche there, we are sold out. So that is a good thing. So I'm very bullish about 2024 and where things are going. But there are complications along the way. I know we'll talk about it just based on everything that the headwinds, the reduction in Facebook traffic, the reduction in really just overall what can happen with Google, traffic from them, and how do you expand your audience? How do you monetize that audience, especially when you're in our position, when you're sold out. We don't want to do audience extension all day. So I think that the different things we could talk about, but I'm bullish on it. I see a lot of green shoots in 2024.
Great. Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, high level, I mean, it's the old adage, negative thinking never drives positive results, right? So at the end of the day, as I'm looking at the industry, just to build, if you look at news, right, specifically, which have been running news for the last 4 years for Vice Media Group, and that's been a good growth part of the business. We were talking a little bit about it last night with some friends, right? Like I think we all need to redefine kind of what news can be in the value prop holistically. Literally and figuratively, that can be a 4-letter word for marketers, and it's not about avoiding news, right? It's about educating them and helping them understand how to navigate news considering the political environment that we're all walking into. And I say all of that knowing that, I think we're in a better spot this year in this election cycle than we were 4 years ago. But, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Allison?
Yeah, I would just add, I do think it's a little problematic to assume media is going to be cyclical and that spring always follows winter, et cetera. I do think you can look and say there are things that are always true. There are always going to be audiences who want trusted, high-quality news and information. They will always be willing to pay for it if it's worth their time, either with attention or dollars, and brands are always going to seek those audiences. But I think beyond those truths, everything else could change. And to be successful in media, you need to understand that may feel like winter for a lot of the time, but that's not a season. That's the environment in which we all get to thrive and to find new opportunities. But I think beyond those 3 truths, everything else could change.
Iván, I'm interested in your thoughts on the question. Being a publisher that has print, and we've all heard, print has been dying for how many years, like years and years and years now. How do you think about that question around the media winter and print in your business?
I think I agree a lot with what Allison was mentioning. I think it's, we need to look at the fundamentals. Like there's always going to be audience interested in understanding what's going on. For us, we believe also that there's going to be audience that wants to understand what's going on in Spanish. That is not going to change. So then you have cyclical aspects, right? You have bad years like last year. You have years that started pretty good like this one, and also have political, which is something cyclical, but it helps when you have news. So I think is, again, we've been talking about the transition and the print decline for years. Mm-hmm. We still have 2 dailies, which is kind of amazing in Spanish in the United States. So we are even amazed of how the long that it took to come to a point where it probably will not be here anymore, but we are still here. We still, have an audience that it's buying the paper every day. And also we have a digital audience, younger, that are reaching us. So I think, going back to the beginning, I think it's fundamentals. That's the part that we don't need to get lost. And I think where there's hope is what is the audience, how you're going to serve them, and then you will build a business that probably will have different mediums and also different sources of revenue. It will change a lot, but fundamentally you will still be able to have something meaningful if you serve that audience.
Yeah, I think that's a good transition into another question that was posed in the panel description around where do media business professionals look for growth? Where are those opportunities? Scott, I'm going to throw this one over to you to start with, but we've seen kind of a seesaw battle between ad revenue and subscriptions and back and forth between kind of those two models, almost as if they're fighting against each other for dominance. But where does that media business professional look for opportunities for growth?
Yeah, sure. So we don't have a subscription business, so I'll leave that to the pros here. But as we look at advertising for us, and Steve talked about it at the very start, right? It's about the community that you serve and the communities that you serve, right? It's not looking at them purely as audience or as users or as dots. It's who is the community that you're servicing, and how do you do that well, right? And doing that well means not just trying to always drive them back to one particular destination, such as your website, right? But going and finding them where they are, servicing them where they are, delivering them value where they are, right? And so that comes for us through the forms of events, right? Going to them in IRL, giving them true places where they can come together, talk about their experiences and find value, right? That comes through through social, that comes through and the influencers that we work with. It also comes through commerce, right? And so I think we're all learning here that with this community, please do more, offer them more, and monetize them more than just with a 728 by 90 ad, right? I mean, like, that sucks. So at the core is if you do have this truly engaged community and this truly engaged audience, right? Like, how do you offer them more, right? How do you offer them products that are going to add value to their life? And for us, I think there's some interesting companies that are helping us do that, and others do that in the publishing space that I'm bullish on. The idea of distributed commerce, which is enabling consumers to check out wherever they are, right, through different places versus always driving them back to a merchant site. I think the technology is now becoming available where they can check out through publishers, whether that be an Axios, whether that be a Vice, whether that be Black Enterprise, you name it, right? And so it's coming firmly AI that's doing that. That's pretty cool. And then the last place not the last place, but the other call out to mention is, producing video content's really expensive, right? And so the how you monetize that, the way that it has been monetized, right, is fundamentally changing, right? And so there's some new partners that are helping us monetize content. There's a company globally called Lead Story that's helping us monetize content more than just once, which has been really helpful. So it's hard for us to across the board. I think you can't change the weather, but you can change your sales, right? And so don't fight technology and rather embrace some of the new companies that are forcing us all to innovate and kind of fight the big waves that are coming, which is AI and et cetera.
So Justin, you mentioned Black Enterprise having a magazine and not having a magazine, so actually losing a revenue source. How did y'all think about kind of replacing that or augmenting that with other channels, other opportunities? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it was an easy choice. Just like you mentioned before, where print media was going, it was hard to sell through. And producing a magazine, there's X cost of just printing it and then mailing it and then the whole thing. So the economics weren't there. But the three things for 2024 that I'm looking forward to is one, which is controversial, but I'll put it out there and I'll speak to it,
there, yeah.
which I call it respectable MFA, right? I am the pro MFA guy in the trades, but I'll talk to that. And then the second thing is CTV, OTT Fast, which we're getting into in the next 6 weeks, launching on a lot of fast channels. And then the third, which is with the referral app people, I see one right directly in front of me. I'm trying to make deals with them to help us, better monetize our page views on their platforms. But what I'll say for the MFA is, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of, you saw Chris Kane and Jounce and Deep Sea people, and it was negative MFA discussions throughout the industry for, let's say, the last back half of 2023. And what I'm saying is, we don't want to do MFA as in gaming, open market CPMs and stuff like that. But when you're a publisher or media company that has direct dollars or PGs or high-level PMPs, and you can buy traffic on Facebook for 3 cents, 4 cents, 5 cents. You're talking about like $30 to $50 CPM, and I have an RPM on page of 300. Why wouldn't I do that? And we should be able to do that. Media companies can't be the only companies that can't market. And that's what all this MFA, the negative stories surrounding it, have put us in. We don't want to be caught on that list. It hurts your business. So I've been really pushing that. But the other two options are as well. I think the big thing we're working on right now is, we do have a lot of video content that we produce from a lot of our journalists, and we do conferences like this. Think about this conference if it was recorded and all these panels and putting it out there. Ours is a little bit more broad audience with business, but there's ways to put it out there for an audience and then to monetize it. And these are just different things. You have to change your media mix versus what we used to have, which was a magazine, and now we're, like I said, digital and events business.
Great. Iván, talk to us a little bit. In preparation for the panel, you spoke about your event strategy and what you're doing there. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Events is something that we are investing a lot this year. We've been doing events for over 20 years, 25 years. Our events are connected to our mission of empowering the Hispanic audience. So those events started out as local events, awards, where we would highlight, Hispanics that do great things for the community, set an example, etc. But what we've seen in the last few years, and also combined with, we've been acquired, so we have more sales force and power now, and we've seen an interest in brands in wanting to connect with this history, wanting to connect with this authenticity. So in order to do that, we need to obviously change that product and make it, national, take it from the local perspective and build more a platform where the event is only part of what we are building. So that's one of the places that we see, that we are putting a lot of effort this year. We are also putting a lot of effort in grants, also it doesn't work for everyone, for every publisher, but for us, that, we serve underserved communities. There's a lot of opportunities for us, so now we have in-house people who is focused in doing just that, which is new for us, and it's, we were very reactive on that front, and now we are being more proactive, and we think that there's an opportunity there. So those are the two things that we are working most that are new. Of course, we will have advertising in circulation in case of the print products, also reader revenue, some affiliate, but those are the two things that we are more interested. So events for us are, something that we want to do more and different, and we see an opportunity.
Interesting. Allison, I'm interested in Axios. Really impressed with what Axios has done over the last few years in terms of also diversification of revenue, investing in local, which we'll get to in a little bit, but then also Axios HQ in terms of providing platforms. How are you thinking about kind of the revenue mix going forward for Axios overall? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody has said here it's going to be diversification. I think the challenge is making sure you are deliberate about that and that there's some sense of commonality. So for us, that commonality is about expertise. If you are reading national newsletters, you want to be knowing what's going on from a person who really understands Congress, really understands deals, really understands the area they're covering. With local, we are looking at our reporters to tell you what you need to know in that city. We're not trying to have 30 beats. We're trying to say in 5 items in a newsletter, what do you need to know if you're in Des Moines, if you're in Detroit, if you're in Houston. And I think even when you look at something like HQ, that's saying, how do we give you tools to be the best in class communicator in your company? But at the center of that has to be some kind of shared brand promise, for lack of a better term, that helps people know, helps your audience know how those are connected.
Great. So this morning, as I was checking email, I got Media Post's publishing newsletter in my inbox, and being at the conference, I actually read it every day and was interested in the headlines in terms of kind of the battle back and forth. So it was Tribune Publishing laying off 200 at one of their print plants, Gannett investing more into local, and then Guardian limiting their articles in-app, so kind of changing their model a bit to support additional revenue growth. And Allison, I want to start with you on this. We hinted about talking about subscription, so this is the point in which we'll switch to the subscription conversation. And I want to bring up an article written by one of your colleagues, Sarah Fisher, and I have the title, News Companies Reverse Course on Hard Subscriptions. This was a bit of a lightning rod in the industry, a very kind of hard take, but you know, a very, one that was a hard take, but really kind of aware of what was going on in the industry. The article highlighted TechCrunch shuttering their TechCrunch Plus platform, Time removing their paywall, The Atlantic shifting to a dynamic paywall. Talk to us a little bit about how Axios is thinking about subscriptions. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the, not so much backlash, but just the frenzy around this article and what it caused.
Yeah, well, Sarah Fisher is a great example of those experts I just mentioned. I think multiple people have mentioned her to me while I've been here. So there's always a business if you've got those experts. In terms of subscriptions, again, I think this goes to the idea that there isn't a silver bullet. We're always going to need to look at how we change and adapt. And at our worst as publishers, we're like the 5-year-olds on the soccer field where like you're just running in a horde after the ball. We can do better than that. We can all do better than that. So I think what we're seeing is not the demise of subscriptions, but the recognition that it doesn't have to only be a hard paywall. I'll give an example of where audiences will surprise you if you listen to them. We're now in 30 cities for local, and we have a voluntary membership model where you can choose to pay $50 to $500 a year. It has grown phenomenally quickly, and the only benefit is you get a shout out for your birthday at the top of the email. And this goes to your point about community, where people are obsessed with this newsletter community that has formed. They're willing to pay for a birthday shout out. Now this year, I want to know, what will they pay if we give them more than that? And I think it will be more, but with very little effort, just by saying, okay, how can we tap into a thing you care about? There's no paywall, there's no set price, and it's turned into a meaningful revenue stream across 30 cities. So I hope there will be more and more experimentation with beyond a hard paywall. How do we really understand what it is that people value? Because that's where you'll find the right model.
So in the seesaw battle between ad revenue, monetization through traffic, and subscriptions, how does Axios think about kind of the media mix there?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to have newsletters at our core. Those are not paywalled, it's ad supported. We're not planning on cutting that off from our audiences because we know that exposing our experts to the specific communities that they connect with is at the heart of our business model. But we're also growing in different ways. As I said, in local, you know, that membership model does nothing to interfere with an ad model. I think it can be a false distinction. We're also looking at, and we have a business called Pro, which is entirely subscription-based. It's geared at companies, and it's geared towards very high dollar, beyond niche, like extremely focused professional information like technology deals or healthcare deals. And that's an audience who has a willingness to pay that's very, very high, and that can support the business. So we've got multiple ad and multiple subscription models at work already in our business.
That's great. You brought up newsletters. I think that's a great topic, something that's near and dear to my heart. We had a great panel discussion earlier on podcasts. How are y'all looking at things like monetization of newsletters, podcasts? We talked a bit about video. Open to the panel in terms of, are you looking at those other touch points additionally to either increase this year or pull back in certain areas? How are you thinking about kind of those additional levers to pull?
Well, for us, we've been doing newsletters also for quite a few years, and we never look at newsletter as a revenue generating machine, more than a way of engaging with the audience, bringing people to our website. Of course, we have some ads in the newsletters, but we still feel that newsletter, it's a very powerful tool to connect with the audiences, and so we don't like to play around with that too much. From that perspective, we don't have in our case subscriptions. We have memberships. We don't feel subscriptions are right for the type of audience that we do. We don't feel comfortable with that.
Sure.
It might work for some publishers, but not for us. And podcasts, it's very interesting too. We started late in the game, but we see a lot of some big advertisers like Amazon wanting to sponsor and actually sponsoring our podcast. So that's also another green shoot that we are talking. But again, it's a mix of things, and newsletter is a great tool, but for us it's more not revenue generating. It's more like audience engagement, audience development tool.
So Justin, you were talking in our prep session around referral traffic. We talked to you a little bit about MFA. Why don't we go into that a little bit more and kind of talk about what you're seeing from a referral traffic perspective and how you're dealing with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Facebook pretty much signaled this maybe 18 months ago that, when we used to have a deal with them with the Facebook News tab, they had an API, they could pull in information, we were getting a flood of traffic, and then obviously the organic stuff when we would post just to Facebook, that all went away. And that's pretty much everybody across the board. I don't know anybody who's doing well on Facebook at all, right? And all the, trades say the same thing. And then you have a lot of the you have a lot of the referral apps that decide to go walled garden. So whether it was, Smart News First and then Newsbreak, they're putting everything on their platform. So while you're getting a, pretty good ComScore number, analytics and stuff like that, they're giving you a rev share of what they have, right? And you look at, like I said, we have brand advertisers who are spending significant CPMs on video and display and native, and we can't monetize it on other platforms. You're seeing that. And then, Google is always search in general is here or there. So that is the real complication of the business. That is what's really hurting if you see, like, obviously, the BuzzFeed stuff and what they were hoping to do with Complex or whatever. All that is stemming from the loss of referral traffic overall. And it's, how can we adapt to that? And obviously, like I said, changing the media mix, but then trying to work with these different partners who have the traffic or who have your content or are monetizing and saying, hey, let's do a deal together where we can help, supply our ad tags maybe, and we can monetize and give you a better, rev share or an ad serve fee or whatever it may be. So trying new things in the industry to really diversify and monetize page views. Like I said, I don't want to do MFA. Sorry, I don't want to do MFA, but I also don't want to do audience extension off my platform all day long, right? That's not what the advertisers want. That's not what we want. We would love to have people come to Black Enterprise and for me to market it, grow audience, email capture, promote our shows, all those things. So we're trying to change that and change the narrative. And that's what I spend most of my time doing when I'm not doing my day-to-day job, is in the trades trying to work the system. And it seems to be working because you've seen, especially with the SSP side, maybe the DSP side, a change in how they're viewing the whole MFA situation. And that's why I keep putting that out there.
Yeah, that's great. So I see Steve stood up, which is a signal that we're ready for questions from the audience. So if anyone has anything for the panel, would love to get that answered for you.
Back there? No, we got a live stream watching. Millions are watching this, millions.
No pressure.
And by the way, throughout this, please stand, tell us who you are and who you're with so we can get to know you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Romy. I'm with GeoEdge. Thanks.
No problem.
First, thanks for a very insightful panel. My question is shifting gears just a little bit. I guess I'm curious, as we head into the upcoming 2024 election season, what is your strategy when it comes to political ads and juggling, I guess, the potential upside in revenue when it comes to political ads, while also making sure you're protecting your brand and not upsetting your users, et cetera, et cetera?
Great question. Anyone want to jump in?
I can share a little bit about that, which is we're very deliberate in how we think about what ads we will accept. We have a set of standards that apply inside and outside of election years. And then when you think about political ads, even within that, there are variations. There are issue ads, there are candidate ads, there are fundraising ads. We don't run fundraising ads. And we also think differently about different parts of our portfolio based on what the audience might expect for us. So for instance, we know that political ads, in our flagship AM newsletter, where there's a lot of political news, would land differently than if you are on a website page. And so we think about that. And we're always looking to our audience for how they respond, and also trying to understand the need in the market and where we can find the balance between those.
Anyone else want to add in?
I mean, we accept all advertising, so we're not going to turn any away, but like we do prefer issue advocacy over fundraising, especially when it comes to something deliberate like, dedicated send e-blast. We don't want to just push out something that's for a candidate just for them to fundraise off of. But if it's an issue they're trying to promote, then we're fine with that.
Great.
Yeah, I could jump in
Yeah, go
just
for it.
two. I mean, so Vice Media Group, we go back to the communities that we serve, right? A lot of the programs and content that we produce kind of fall into two buckets. One, it's culture, it's entertainment, but then it's also we'll produce content that supports various issues, various communities, and we do that in collaboration with brands and not. So, like when we're looking at some of the content, the issue-based content, we're happy to take, but the outside of content, if it just ads, it's ads, right? And I think our audience is smart enough to see that an ad that's bought programmatically, is just an ad. We are not endorsing. If we're producing a piece of content that's, talking about women's rights, if we're talking about LGBTQIA advocacy, right? Like that's coming from our brand voice, and that's content that's going across our socials and our handles. But 728 by 90, I don't know. We're a little bit more loose, although certainly, keep tabs on exactly who that is and what their ultimate intentions are, and how the audience might react.
Great, thank you.
How about e-commerce and affiliate revenue? Are any of you seeing any growth or opportunities there, or any changes in the market for you?
I mean, I see. I mean, at high level, I see a lot of opportunity that's there. Again, I kind of go back to who are the people that you can actually help and create value with, and hopefully it's more than just advertising. So again, but I think you have to look at the audiences that you're serving, right, and making sure the context is right. I mean, I think that friends who I've had in the news business for many years, they've tried to build commerce marketplaces and on news sites, and it kind of just doesn't, like, why is it there? Now that said, right, retail has powered news publishers for a long time. You go back to newspapers, right? Like stuff falls, merchant ads, fall out, right? So it has to be done in the right way and through the right placement in the right context. Things like what Men's Health is doing, I think, is outstanding, right? They have a unique audience. They have who's coming there looking for fitness. They're already producing content that's specifically around fitness. So how do you then convert a consumer? Say, hey, if you do want to buy X product that we just talked about, great, go and do it. I think New York Post has found some unique ways of doing it too. So I'm extremely bullish, and I think there's a lot more opportunities. Like I mentioned, I think there's a couple companies that are out there that are doing some very unique things that will, like firmly, that allows a publisher to actually transact on their site while maintaining the merchant to be the merchant of record without driving them off to a merchant site and losing them, right? Because in theory, it's like, okay, we got a user that comes to our website. That's awesome, right? And then we immediately say, hey, if you want to do something more, go to a merchant, check it out. Now you just lost them. If you could drive the transaction on the site and then have the user continue to scroll through and consume more content, that's a much better experience than just immediately as someone shows up, serving them a great piece of content and says, hey, please leave, right? Like, what are we doing here? That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So.
Oh, yeah, I just had a follow-up, Scott. It was interesting that you do issues content. Are you apolitical about it? How do you decide which issues you take? And would you take it from either side? Would you do a pro-choice, pro-life content? Do you have a political standard and practice around that?
Well, look, I think if you look like Ed Fontes Media, I think they're doing some really great work to understand the political ambition of specific companies. And if you measure the extreme right all the way over to the extreme left, right? Without getting into a piece of, some sort of debate on, pro-life or what have you, right? Like, it's taking a middle ground and taking a kind of honest assessment of what's happening and reporting on the news and both sides of the table versus.
It's not sponsored. It's your organic content.
Well, it's in either scenario, right? I mean, it's whether it's organic content that we're going to talk about what is actually happening in the world. That's the application of a journalist, right? Or if you're talking about sponsored content, right? There is certain content that advertisers will look to take a stand on, right? And if that stand aligns with the brand and aligns with our journalistic integrity, then we are happy to produce that content. I think if you look at the very core, because news organizations, and I'm not talking specifically about Vice News right now through this because we're all on the record, so I want to be super clear, but the number of jobs lost in the news ecosystem over the last several years is astounding, right? And so what that ultimately means, outside of the obvious, which is you got less people reporting the news, is that there's a lot of content that ultimately does not get produced, right? It hits the cutting room floor. It's like, we would love to produce this story to support this community, right? But ultimately, we can't. We don't have the resources. We have to make decisions on what we're going to cover and how we're going to cover it, right? And so when a brand comes in and says, hey, we would love to produce a long-form documentary to talk about, to show support for the LGBTQIA community, right? And the different people who are supporting it and are helping to help that community thrive, right? Or whether it's some of the great work that we've done supporting the BIPOC community, right? And the reporting we've done there. When brands come in to help underwrite that content, right? That's sponsored content.
As long as it aligns with your political orientation, right?
I mean, I don't want to use the word my political orientation because not me personally, or even it's this like news organization. Unfortunately, in the recent years, right? Like we've politicized news, right? Like it's like, and it's opinion based, et cetera. If we just get back to actually reporting on the news and the facts, like we will report on the news and the facts that are out there. And so, the good, the bad, and the ugly on all of that. So.
Hey, Steve, we have one more question back here, if that's okay.
Okay,
One more.
all right, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, hey, it's Peter Zushner from ARP Digital Ad Network. So we're seeing something pretty unusual at ARP. Last first quarter was the best first quarter we ever had. This year we're about 40% ahead of where we were last year, but flat for the rest of the year. And I'm wondering, are you seeing your clients plan quarterly? Are you seeing a big jump in Q1 that you don't think is sustainable? Is it related to Google and the cookies, the election, recessionary fears? I'm just trying to get a handle on what you're seeing, particularly Justin.
Yeah, well, what I would say is you shouldn't worry because media briefs are coming from, the brands right now
Our
to the agencies.
pipeline is very rich, yeah.
Yeah, so they're going through the process right now. The planning is happening. So if you're in the consideration set, then you should see something soon for the rest of the year. But like you said, we see great numbers for Q1, and we're still hopeful for the rest of the year. But I don't think that, listen, at the end of the day, Google and Meta and now Amazon are taking majority of every dollar that's spent. But there's still room for media publishers to be successful within whatever's left, the 10 cents, right? And I just think that it takes time for it to flow through the whole process. And we're always in constant communication with the agencies, and that's what they're telling us.
We are going to be able to continue this in our roundtable at the end of the morning on the same topic. But for now, George, panel, thanks so much for kicking it off.